They told me I was dead. Well, not in so many words. The blast in Kandahar was supposed to have turned me into paste, vaporized along with half my unit. My dog tags were found, my helmet crushed, my blood on the sand, or so the report said. There wasn't enough left of me to ship home, just a folded flag and a few metal fragments. For months, I was listed as Kia killed in action. Official. Signed and stamped. And with that, the world moved on. My family got the call, the condolences, the medals. They cried into microphones at the memorial, accepted the folded flag with shaking hands. Then they took the check, the compensation, the life insurance, the widow's benefits, a small fortune for my sacrifice. And me? I was still breathing. Buried under rubble, barely clinging to life, I was pulled out by locals, men who didn't speak my language but who understood enough about death to know when someone wasn't quite done yet. For months, I was hidden, nursed, and finally handed off to a private contractor who helped smuggle me back to Germany, then eventually stateside. But by the time I made it home, my world was gone. The house I left behind sat empty, foreclosed. My old friends had long since moved on. A few still posted the occasional, never-forgotten tribute on social media, but none had expected to ever see me again. I stood in my old driveway like a stranger haunting his own grave. That's when the rot started to show. I found them, of course. Wasn't hard. My wife, Amanda, and my daughter, Lily, had relocated across the country. Bigger house. Gated community. Fresh start. Bought and paid for by my supposed death. But it wasn't the money that broke me. Not entirely. No, it was what I saw next. Amanda hadn't just moved on. She'd upgraded. There he was, David Mercer. The man who used to be my so-called friend. My old buddy from back when we were all kids running around the same neighborhood. David, who once toasted at our wedding. David, who consoled my wife after the tragic loss of her husband. David, who was now playing father to my daughter, sleeping in my bed, driving my car. A ready-made family, courtesy of my tombstone. I didn't confront them that night. No, war teaches you patience. You learn to observe. To wait. Rage burns fast if you let it. But cold anger freezes time. It sharpens the edges. I watched from a distance, unseen. Amanda looked good, far too good for someone who was supposed to be shattered by grief. She laughed at dinner. She kissed David at the door when he left for work. My daughter called him Dad. That word hit harder than any enemy bullet ever could. And then came the part that snapped something inside me completely. A conversation. Caught on the baby monitor they used for their new infant. Yes, they had another child now, one that would have never existed if I hadn't died. Amanda's voice, casual as you please. I never thought it'd be this easy, honestly. The insurance money came through so fast. And you know what's crazy? Sometimes I feel like I loved him more dead than alive. Isn't that awful? David chuckled. He was always holding you back, Amanda. You deserve better. We deserve this life. My life. My family. My child. My name. They didn't mourn me. They profited off me. And I realized then. The war didn't kill me. They did. In war, you learn how to read people. You start to see the things most miss, the little betrayals in the eyes, the weight behind a breath, the small gestures that speak louder than words. That skill stayed with me long after the firefights ended. Watching Amanda now? She was a damn open book. From my rented car parked across the street, I observed her morning routine like clockwork. Lattes with the moms. Pilates. Lunches at high-end cafes. And of course, afternoon shopping trips where she spent money I supposedly died to provide. Not a trace of the grieving widow remained. No black dresses. No dark sunglasses to hide swollen, red eyes. No, Amanda glowed. She was thriving. Meanwhile, David played the role of doting husband. And Lily, she called him Daddy with ease. Like I was some chapter they had all agreed to forget. It ate at me. Not just the betrayal, but the ease of it all. As if my entire existence had been a mild inconvenience they'd finally swept aside. Every part of me screamed to storm in there, tear it all down, expose every lie. But that would have been sloppy. And weak. I didn't survive hell just to die as a fool. Instead, I started peeling back the layers. The first crack appeared in their finances. A quiet favor from an old army buddy now working for a private investigations firm got me access to some very interesting documents. Amanda hadn't just pocketed the insurance payout. She and David were still siphoning funds under my name, leveraging my military benefits through forged documentation. Fraud. Federal-level fraud. And worse, They'd even filed for an additional survivor's pension under some loophole. The signatures? Forged. The affidavits? False. They had turned my death into a full-blown business operation. Tax-free, government-backed, and completely illegal. The more I uncovered, the colder I got. But it was nothing compared to what I found next. One afternoon, while Amanda was out, I followed David to his small office complex on the other side of town. I waited until he left, then broke into the office. It wasn't hard. The security system was a joke compared to what I dealt with overseas. Inside, I found files, entire folders filled with correspondence. Not just with Amanda, but with multiple insurance adjusters, attorneys, and even offshore banking contacts. They were planning to leave. David had been slowly moving assets into accounts overseas. Accounts Amanda didn't even know about. I recognized the move for what it was. He was planning to cut her loose. He got his prize, now he was getting ready to disappear with the money. A part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to watch them both burn. But no, not yet. The final blow would come later. Calculated. Public. Devastating. You see, there's a difference between justice and revenge. Justice satisfies the world. Revenge satisfies the soul. By now, I had all the pieces laid out on the table, figuratively and literally. My rented apartment was turning into a war room. Stacks of files, printed emails, financial statements, surveillance photos. A timeline of betrayal. If there's one thing the Army taught me, it's that you don't charge headfirst into enemy territory. You isolate, expose, and dismantle. One evening, I finally reached out to an old contact, Robert Doyle. He was former military intelligence, now working freelance in the private sector. The kind of guy who could make people disappear from paperwork without ever leaving town. I laid it all out for him. He whistled low when I finished. Jesus, Garrison. They really played you. No, Rob, I corrected. They thought they played me. We spent the next 2 weeks building the webtitle. First, we contacted the Department of Veterans Affairs anonymously, submitting a detailed dossier of suspected fraudulent claims under my name. Documents that would trigger federal audits and criminal investigations. Second, we hacked into David's offshore accounts and quietly flagged his transactions for the IRS and Treasury. Once those agencies sniff blood in international waters, they don't let go. The penalties alone would bleed him dry. Third, and this was my favorite, we reached out to an investigative journalist hungry for a career-making story. A war hero presumed dead returns home to find his widow and best friend embezzling his benefits? That kind of headline writes itself. All I had to do was keep watching and wait for the dominoes to fall. Amanda was still blissfully unaware. She went about her charade, hosting charity events in my honor, Gold Star widow of Captain Nathan Garrison. I nearly vomited watching her bask in the attention, wearing that pathetic smile of hers while telling people how hard it had been. But Lily keeps me strong, she'd say, placing a delicate hand on our daughter's shoulder like a stage prop. Lily. God, my sweet little girl. She was the only reason I kept my rage on ice. I made sure to watch from afar, always at a distance, but never far enough that I couldn't step in if she was in danger. She deserved better than this farce they'd built around her. She deserved her father back. But first, I had to bury these two snakes. And as it turned out, fate had impeccable timing. One evening, David's offshore accounts were frozen. Treasury agents paid him a visit the next morning. His business partner was arrested on charges of money laundering. And suddenly David found himself very, very alone. Amanda? She found out the same way the rest of the world did on the evening news. I watched from my apartment, sipping black coffee as her perfect world unraveled on live TV. Cameras flashed. Reporters shoved microphones into her face. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the panic leaking from her eyes. Mrs. Garrison, do you have a statement? Is it true your husband is alive? She froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked like a cornered animal. Because that's exactly what she was. The moment my existence went public again, everything shifted. They called it the miracle soldier. Every news outlet ran the same headline. Army Captain Nathan Garrison returns from the dead. People eat that stuff up. A clean story. The war hero presumed Kia, back to reclaim his life. What they didn't know yet was the mess waiting underneath that polished headline. The media ate it up for days. My phone lit up nonstop. Journalists, government officials, lawyers, distant relatives suddenly interested in my welfare. Former comrades trying to process the impossible. My old CO even called, his voice cracking. Son, I don't know what to say. We buried you. I know, sir. I said. But I'm not done yet. Of course, Amanda saw it too. I waited. I wanted to see how long it would take her to contact me. It took exactly 36 hours. Pathetic. My burner phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in years. Amanda? Nate? Oh my God. Is it really you? I stared at the message for a long minute. My thumb hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to lash out immediately, to pour out everything I'd bottled up since I climbed out of that rubble overseas. But no. The cold part of me, the soldier who survived hell, won that battle. I replied with only 2 words. Me. Too. The next day she called. I didn't pick up. Let her squirm. By then, Amanda was scrambling. The world she built on my grave was collapsing fast. David had been arrested and was facing federal charges. Their accounts were frozen. The house was under investigation. The government wanted answers about every penny she'd touched since my death. The noose was tightening, and I was holding the rope. Finally, after a week, I agreed to meet her. A neutral location. A public park. No cameras. No lawyers. Just us. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting on a bench like some broken widow still playing her part. When she saw me walking toward her, she stood abruptly, tears spilling down her face. Fake tears. Nate, she whispered. I didn't hug her. I didn't reach out. I just stood there. Still. Cold. You're alive. Her voice trembled. How? Long story, I said flatly. Plenty of time to tell it in court. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Her mouth opened, closed, then tried to smile, the manipulator scrambling for her old tricks. You have to understand. I thought you were gone. David and I, we were grieving. You were cashing checks. Her face darkened. She tried again. You have no idea how hard it was for me, raising Lily alone. I was lost. Broken. I didn't want this. It just happened. 6 months after I died, Amanda. My voice sharpened. 6 months. That's how long you waited to start ing, my best friend. Her lip quivered. Cornered. We thought we lost you forever. It was complicated. No, I said coldly. What you did was simple. You sold my memory for comfort. You turned my daughter into your prop and my grave into your bankroll. Don't insult me by calling it complicated. Amanda looked like she might collapse. And then, for the first time in this entire twisted game, she told the truth. He said it was easier this way. David said, we could build a better life without you. I smiled. There it was. The confession. Her words hung in the air like a bad smell. David said we could build a better life without you. I let the silence linger, let her stew in it. Amanda always hated silence. She preferred noise, attention, excuses. Without them, her confidence shriveled. Better life? Huh? I said, my voice low. How's that working out for you now? She broke. The dam finally cracked. Please, Nate. I didn't know what else to do. I was alone, terrified. I made mistakes. Stop. One word. Firm. Cold. Her mouth snapped shut instantly. Even after everything, she still recognized that edge in my voice. The same voice I used in uniform. The voice that gave orders people followed. You're not sorry you did it, I continued. You're sorry you got caught. I took a step closer, enough to see the panic swimming behind her eyes. I'm alive, Amanda. That makes every dollar you spent theft. Every signature you forged a felony. Every lie you told, perjury. Her lower lip trembled. She opened her mouth again, but I raised my hand and cut her off. Don't. You'll only make it worse. I didn't need her apologies. I didn't even want them. This wasn't about making peace. It was about finishing the war. After that meeting, I left her standing there, alone, broken in a way no staged tears could fix. She was about to learn what real consequences looked like, consequences she could no longer manipulate or charm her way out of. The agencies closed in fast after that. IRS agents froze every account linked to her and David. The Department of Veterans Affairs charged her with fraud. The FBI launched their own investigation into conspiracy and insurance fraud. Federal court dates were scheduled. David, meanwhile, flipped. The moment his legal team realized how deep he was buried, he turned state's witness. Rolled on Amanda like a cheap rug, painting her as the mastermind who lured him into the scheme. Typical coward. And it worked, partly. His cooperation earned him a lighter sentence, but he still wasn't walking free. He traded orange jumpsuits for slightly shorter prison time. Amanda? She wasn't so lucky. Her attorneys tried every angle: mental distress, grief-induced lapses, coercion. but none of it held up. The evidence I collected was airtight. My return from the dead made sure of that. Lily was the only part that still twisted the knife. She was still young, still confused, too innocent to understand what her mother really was. And I refused to let Amanda use her as a bargaining chip. The court saw it my way. Sole custody was awarded to me, the man who was legally, morally, and biologically still her father. The man who hadn't abandoned her. The man who came back from the grave for her. The day Amanda was sentenced, I sat in the courtroom, Lily home safe with my sister. Amanda was pale, dressed in a plain, beige suit like some desperate attempt to look fragile. The judge wasn't moved. Neither was I. "Do you have anything to say before sentencing, Mrs. Garrison?" the judge asked. She glanced my way, tears welling up in her eyes one last time. "I loved him," she whispered. I held her gaze. I didn't blink. "You loved what I provided," I said flatly. The gavel fell. 8 years federal time. No parole. The gavel hit that polished wood like a thunderclap, but for me, it was just punctuation. Amanda collapsed into her attorney's arms, sobbing like it would make a difference. But there was no audience left to perform for. The reporters had already turned their cameras toward the next scandal. David's sentencing was scheduled for the following week, but I didn't bother attending that circus. He wasn't worth the gas. The one thing I kept hearing from family, from old friends, from total strangers who recognized my face from the news, was how strong I must be. How brave. How resilient. Brave? No. Resilient? Maybe. But strong? Not in the way they meant. The truth was simpler, uglier. I was cold. Colder than any foxhole. Colder than any desert night. Colder than war. Because war taught me how people break. But betrayal? That teaches you how you break. And once you break, you either shatter or sharpen. I focused on Lily after that. She became my mission. At first, she didn't understand why Mommy wasn't coming home. She asked, of course. Kids always do. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming back?" I knelt beside her, steady as stone. "Mommy made some very bad choices, sweetheart. She has to take responsibility." Her eyes welled up, but she nodded. She was stronger than she should have had to be at that age. I promised myself she'd never again be used as a pawn in anyone's game, not Amanda's, not David's, not the system's. Her innocence was the last thing I had left worth protecting, and I'd already come back from the dead to protect it. As the months went by, the vultures moved on. The media stopped calling. The headlines faded. The neighbors stopped whispering. But I never fully came back. Not really. You see, when you die, even just on paper, something inside you stays buried. I was breathing, working, raising my daughter. But the man Amanda married, the one she once called her rock, he didn't survive Kandahar. He died out there the day his wife and best friend started measuring his worth and insurance payouts. I'd built a new version of myself out of ash and wire. I worked construction for a while, something honest. Simple. Paid the bills. I didn't want charity. I didn't want pity. I just wanted my world small, quiet, and controlled. Every now and then, though, I'd catch Lily looking at the photo on the mantle, the old wedding photo of Amanda and me. I kept it there on purpose. A relic. A reminder. A wound you don't let close completely. "Was Mommy always like that?" she asked one evening, her voice barely a whisper. I paused. Not out of hesitation, but to pick my words like landmines. "No," I said softly. "She just forgot who she was. And what mattered." Lily nodded, her little brow furrowing in a way that made my chest tighten. She was starting to understand things most adults still couldn't face. And that broke my heart even more than war ever did. But there was one thing I knew with absolute clarity. She'd never have to fight this war herself. You'd think after all that, the ghosts would finally stay buried. But ghosts have a funny way of finding you, even when you bury them yourself. About a year after Amanda's sentencing, I got a knock on my door. Middle of the afternoon. Sun shining. Birds chirping like nothing in the world was broken. But as soon as I opened that door, the old cold settled right back into my bones. There stood Amanda's mother, Carolyn. She hadn't aged well. Life without access to Amanda's stolen bank accounts hadn't been kind to her perfectly manicured world. The designer clothes were gone. The expensive jewelry sold. What was left was a bitter woman who finally realized her daughter's safety net wasn't coming back. "Nathan," she greeted me with the same fake warmth she used to wear at family gatherings. "May I come in?" I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. She shifted uncomfortably under my stare. I just wanted to talk. About Lily. That was the wrong name to throw out first. You want to talk about my daughter? I said quietly. The one you haven't called, visited, or written to in over a year? Her lips trembled, not from emotion, but from losing control of the narrative. We're still her family, Nathan. Regardless of what Amanda did. I let out a short, humorless breath. Almost a laugh. No. You were Amanda's family. And you made your choices right alongside her. Her voice sharpened. The mask slipped. Nathan, please, don't punish Lily by cutting her off from her grandparents. That was the final straw. The audacity, the entitlement, was almost impressive. Almost. I stepped forward, voice flat as a sniper's pulse. You stood by while your daughter built a grave over my name. You benefited from every dime she stole. You smiled at every lie she told. You knew. And now you want access to my daughter? You think I'm going to let you poison her like you poisoned Amanda? Her lip quivered again. She tried softening her voice one last time. Nathan, I know you're still angry, but surely you can find forgiveness. You think this is about anger? I whispered, leaning in. This isn't anger, Carolyn. This is clarity. She recoiled like she'd been slapped. Finally, she saw the version of me that crawled out of Kandahar's rubble, the man Amanda never expected to return. Don't ever come back here, I said. Next time, I won't be this polite. The door shut in her face like a coffin lid. After that day, there were no more visitors. No more family members trying to worm their way back in. The Garrison name was finally mine again, stripped clean of their rot. At night, when the house was quiet and Lily was asleep, I'd sit on the porch sometimes, cigarette in hand. Not because I smoked, but because the ritual reminded me I was still here. Alive. Unforgiven. But unbroken. The storm wasn't over. Not yet. Legally, Amanda was locked up. David was serving his own sentence. Carolyn and the rest of her family had vanished into their own pitiful corners. But the thing about betrayal is, even when you crush the snake, you still have to burn the nest. I wasn't just interested in justice. I wanted finality. One night, while Lily was sleeping upstairs, I pulled out the box. The box that held everything. Files. Documents. Photos. Evidence. Every phone record. Every offshore transaction. Every signature Amanda forged. I wasn't holding on to them out of sentiment. No, this wasn't nostalgia. This was insurance. Because if life had taught me anything, it's that people like Amanda don't stop trying to slither back into your life, even behind prison walls. Sure enough, I was right. It started small. A letter from Amanda's attorney. Nicely worded. Manipulative. In light of recent good behavior, my client respectfully requests a reevaluation of her custody rights upon release. I almost laughed when I read it. Release? Custody? Not in this lifetime. They were playing the long game, assuming that after serving half her sentence, Amanda could worm her way back, claim to be rehabilitated, and somehow petition for partial custody of Lily. Not on my watch. That's when I called Robert Doyle again, my old intelligence contact. Thought you might, eventually, he said, voice low and calm. I've kept my ear to the ground. Robert handed me more than I expected. Turns out Amanda's rehabilitation narrative was just smoke. Even from prison, she was manipulating people. Prison guards, parole officers, therapists, lying through her teeth, playing the part of the broken, remorseful widow. But Robert dug deeper into the financials. Amanda still had hidden assets, small trusts she never declared, set up years before I returned. Shell companies quietly feeding her prison account through layers of fake corporations. She was planning her return long before she was ever sentenced. She's trying to buy her way back into Lily's life, Robert said. Not anymore, I replied. I compiled everything. Filed a full report with the state's Department of Child Welfare. I submitted financial audits, psychological reports, and multiple character affidavits. The entire history of Amanda's manipulation laid out in excruciating detail. And then I filed one final motion. Permanent termination of parental rights. The court date was scheduled. It was time to drive the final nail. The morning of the hearing, I stood in front of the mirror while Lily quietly ate her cereal behind me. She was older now, starting to see the world for what it was. She didn't know everything yet, but she knew enough to know I was protecting her. Are you okay, Daddy? She asked softly. I smiled at her reflection in the glass. I'm better than okay, sweetheart. Because after today, Amanda would never be able to touch my daughter again. The courtroom was smaller than the last one. No cameras this time. No media frenzy. Just a judge, a clerk, two attorneys, and the final echoes of a war that should have ended long ago. Amanda sat across from me. No shackles, but she may as well have worn them. She looked thinner now, more fragile. Prison can do that to a person. But I knew better. Underneath that gaunt face was the same calculating mind that once signed my death certificate in her heart. Her lawyer did all the talking. Some cookie-cutter weasel barely out of law school. He painted a portrait of remorse, of time served, of a rehabilitation, of a mother who deeply regrets her past mistakes and longs for a second chance to reconnect with her daughter. Amanda even managed a few well-timed tears. She was still playing her game, even after everything. When it was my turn, I didn't say much. I didn't need to. I simply handed over the folder. The judge flipped through it silently, page after page. Hidden offshore accounts. Prison communications proving manipulation. Counseling reports showing continued deception. Robert's full audit on undisclosed assets. Testimonies from prison staff who witnessed her attempts to exploit the system. The stack of evidence weighed heavier than any argument her lawyer could offer. At one point, Amanda's face flushed. She finally realized she wasn't just losing, she was finished. The judge looked up after several long minutes. "Mrs. Garrison," he said, his voice steady. "Your actions, both before incarceration and while in custody, demonstrate not only a severe lack of remorse but an ongoing pattern of manipulation. This court sees no evidence you have made any genuine attempt at rehabilitation. Effective immediately, all parental rights are terminated. You will have no legal claim, visitation rights, or future contact with the child." The sound of the gavel dropping was perfect. Amanda gasped. Her attorney whispered something desperate in her ear. The judge had already left the bench. I stood up calmly, straightened my jacket. Amanda's eyes locked on mine one final time, full of rage, fear, and something she hadn't felt since the moment I walked back into her life. Defeat. I gave her nothing. No words. No gloating. Just one long, cold stare. Lily waited for me outside the courtroom, sitting beside my sister who had taken care of her during the hearing. She looked up as I approached. "It's over, kiddo," I said softly, kneeling to her height. She didn't fully understand the weight of those words, not yet. But one day she would. She threw her arms around my neck. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. People think the hardest part of betrayal is the moment you discover it. It's not. The hardest part is what comes after. The quiet. The silence you're left with when the war is over. No more court dates. No more surveillance. No more strategy sessions in my dark apartment turned war room. The storm had passed. And yet, I wasn't whole. Because the man who fought that war, who crawled out of the wreckage in Kandahar, never fully came home. Lily adjusted quicker than I expected. Children are resilient in ways adults can't fathom. We moved away. Not far, but far enough that the shadows of Amanda's world couldn't reach us. A quiet neighborhood. A modest house. Fresh start. New school. For the first time, I was just dad. Not the man who came back from the dead. Not the husband who'd been betrayed. Just Lily's father. We developed routines, safe, predictable routines. Mornings with pancakes. Evenings reading bedtime stories. Saturday trips to the lake where she'd skip stones while I sipped bad gas station coffee, watching her innocence rebuild itself piece by piece. But every night, after she fell asleep, I'd sit in that damn chair by the window. Same chair. Same drink. Staring out into nothing. Because even with Amanda gone, with David serving his sentence, with Carolyn long vanished into whatever shallow hole she crawled into, I still felt the weight pressing against my chest. Survivor's guilt. Not from the war. Not from the men we lost overseas. But from surviving this, surviving her. I hadn't just lost a marriage. I lost the illusion that what we built ever meant anything to her. And there was no rank, no uniform, no battlefield training that prepared me for that kind of war. One evening, my sister, God bless her, finally said what I hadn't dared admit out loud. "You know you're allowed to breathe again, right?" she said. I sipped my whiskey and stared out the window. "Funny thing about breathing," I said. "After you've been drowning long enough, you forget how. The world saw me as the man who beat the odds. The war hero who came home and took back his life. But I knew the truth. I didn't take back my life. I buried what was left of it and built something new. Because sometimes that's the best you get. And if I'm being honest, that was enough for me. But then came the letter. Because apparently, fate wasn't quite done testing how much I could carry. It arrived in an unmarked envelope. No return address. Just my name, typed. Clean. Precise. Like whoever sent it didn't want fingerprints attached. I knew that kind of envelope. I'd seen it before. In the military, that kind of letter never brought good news. I opened it slow, deliberate. Inside was a single page. No signature. No introduction. Just a short, cold message. Thought you should know, David's getting out early. I read it again. And again. The date was circled at the bottom. 6 months from now. David Mercer. The man who crawled into my grave and tried to wear my life like a stolen suit. I knew this day would come eventually. I had hoped it wouldn't be this soon, but deep down, I never counted on the system to hold him forever. Cooperation buys favors. That bastard sang like a bird during the investigation. Turned on Amanda. Handed over evidence. Made himself useful enough to shave years off his sentence. And now, he was coming back into the world. Breathing the same air I bled for. I sat in that chair again. Whiskey glass sweating in my palm. This wasn't rage anymore. Rage burns hot, bright, fast. This was something colder. Heavier. Familiar. The battlefield was shifting again. The next morning, I called Robert. He's getting out. Yeah, Robert sighed. I heard. How much risk do you think there is? Robert was silent for a few seconds. Long enough to feel the weight of what wasn't being said. He's not stupid, Robert finally answered. But men like him? They don't like losing. You took everything, Nate. The house. The money. The woman. His freedom. Don't expect him to forgive that. I don't need his forgiveness, I said flatly. I need to know if he's a problem. Robert's voice dropped low. Let's assume he will be. For the next few weeks, I went back into recon mode. Surveillance. Background checks. Social media sweeps. New contacts at probation. Quiet conversations with local law enforcement. David was being released into supervised custody, but that supervision wouldn't last forever. Men like him always find cracks to slip through. And I wasn't going to be caught flat-footed. Not this time. Not with Lily in my house. You see, it's one thing to take my wife. It's one thing to steal my identity. But if he even thought about coming near my daughter again, I would remind him who came back from the dead. David Mercer walked out of that prison like he was stepping off a plane. Clean cut. Fresh haircut. Brand new clothes bought by somebody who still thought he was worth investing in. That's the thing about men like David. They always find new enablers. Parasites attract parasites. He wasn't alone either. Waiting for him outside was a woman, not Amanda, obviously, but someone new. Young. Naive. Probably sold on his sob story about how he was set up and manipulated by his lover's scheme. Predators never change. They just change prey. Robert kept me updated. He had eyes everywhere. He's playing it smart for now, Robert said one night. Keeping his head down. Probation officer likes him, thinks he's a model case. I chuckled dryly. Of course he does. David's been rehearsing that act for years. Robert leaned forward across my kitchen table. But don't let your guard down, Nate. The minute he finds a weak spot, he'll take it. There won't be one, I said, eyes flat. Not this time. I made changes. Security system upgrades. Cameras at every angle. Motion lights. New locks. Extra layers even a professional would struggle with. Lily didn't fully understand why. I didn't want her to. To her, it was just Daddy being extra careful. And if I'm being honest, it wasn't just about keeping David out. It was about keeping my rage contained. Giving myself the comfort of knowing I wouldn't have to make the choice to hunt him unless he forced my hand. Weeks passed. Then months. David started rebuilding his life, at least on paper. New job. New apartment. New girlfriend. He even got himself a shiny new Instagram account full of motivational quotes and selfies about second chances and God's plan. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so disgustingly calculated. But what chilled me more wasn't what he posted, it was what he didn't. No mention of Amanda. No mention of the past. And most importantly, no mention of Lily. That worried me. Because men like David, they don't forget unfinished business. Then came the phone call. Late one night. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Deep, gravelly, and smiling through the receiver like this was some kind of reunion. David Mercer. Nate, he drawled. Long time. I said nothing. Just let the silence bleed into him. Relax, man. I'm not calling to cause trouble. Then why are you calling? I finally said, my voice like ice. I just wanted to clear the air. We've both moved on. No need for bad blood. Bad blood? That man had bled me dry for years, and now he wanted to pretend we were civil? We don't have blood, David. You lost that privilege the day you crawled into my life. Hey, he chuckled, it's all in the past, right? Water under the bridge. I don't know who you're trying to convince, me or yourself. The smile in his voice faded slightly. That crack in his mask? That was real. You've got your life back, Nate. I've got mine. But we both know who really ruined Amanda, don't we? You went off to war and left her behind. What choice did she have? He wanted to bait me. He wanted me to lash out, to lose control. But I didn't. Don't call this number again, I said quietly. And if you ever come near my daughter, you won't get a second warning. And then I hung up. My hands steady. My breathing calm. War mode activated. The fact that he called me wasn't random. David never did anything without intent. It was a test. He wanted to know if I was still watching. If I still had teeth. If I still feared him. He got his answer. But the real problem wasn't the call. The real problem was that for him to make that call, it meant he was starting to circle. Testing boundaries. Looking for cracks. Robert and I stepped things up. We quietly installed remote surveillance on David's new apartment. Legal? No. Necessary? Absolutely. The first few weeks, nothing unusual. He played the model citizen. Probation check-ins, work shifts, new girlfriend visits. He was building the illusion of normalcy for everyone else. But not for me. Because behind the curtains, there were small signs. Encrypted emails. Anonymous online accounts traced through burner phones. Searches related to my daughter's school district. That last one made my blood run cold. He's not done, Robert said, voice grim. He's smarter than the average idiot. But his ego's getting the better of him. He's watching Lily. He's trying to find an angle, I said flatly. Robert nodded. It's not a question of if, Nate. It's when. I started living like I had overseas again, hypervigilant. Every trip to the store. Every drop-off at school. Every glance over my shoulder. Lily never noticed. At least, I told myself she didn't. But kids feel tension better than most adults. They feel it in your voice. In the way your hand tenses when they cross the street. In how often you double-check the locks at night. Then came the first real move. A letter. Left in my mailbox. No postage. No return address. I opened it carefully, like disarming a bomb. Inside was a photo. Lily. At school. On the swing set. Taken from a distance, far enough to avoid immediate suspicion, but close enough to send the message. No words. No signature. Just the photo. Robert was at my place within the hour. This is escalation, he said. He's trying to control your fear. He wants you rattled. He's miscalculating, I said quietly. How so? Because he still thinks I'm the same man he knew. I set the photo down. My fingers didn't shake. He's making a move. Fine. Now it's my turn. David thought he was in control. That was his first mistake. You see, people like David always confuse restraint for weakness. They mistake calm for fear. And they never learn until it's too late. That night, Robert and I met in the garage. Same place we used for the first war. We bait him, I said. Robert didn't blink. He knew where this was heading. He's watching for an opening. We give him one. We started laying the groundwork. First, I changed my patterns, deliberately. No more security upgrades. No more cameras added. No more extra patrol requests at the school. We made it look like I was backing off, like I was getting complacent, like I was tiring. I even let Lily stay overnight at my sister's more often, giving the illusion that my guard was down, that maybe I was slipping back into some kind of fragile normal. We wanted him to think the pressure was getting to me, that I was vulnerable, that his intimidation tactics were working. Second, Robert tracked his communication channels. David started using proxies, burner apps, unregistered SIMs, dark web forums. But Robert was better. Former military intelligence doesn't retire, it just moves into quieter rooms. We followed the trail of his encrypted conversations. David was hunting, asking about private investigators who could help him reconnect with family members after a custody battle. Code words for something far uglier. It wasn't about custody. It was about access. Access to Lily. Access to my house. Access to my world. He wanted to worm his way back into her life, indirectly at first. Play the victim. The reformed man who just wanted to rebuild lost family connections. I could practically hear Amanda's voice and his tactics smooth, manipulative, rehearsed. But here's where David made his second fatal mistake. He believed I was playing defense, that I would wait, that I was still the man he buried years ago. We orchestrated the final piece. I leaked a quiet rumor, through a fake account tied to one of his known contacts, that Lily would be attending a charity event 2 weeks out. Public. Light security. High visibility. Bait. And like the predictable coward he was, David bit. Robert confirmed the surveillance footage, David scouting the event venue late at night. Twice. He's preparing, Robert said. Waiting for the right moment. Then let's give him one, I replied. The stage was set. What David didn't know was that every inch of that venue would be covered, not by mall cops or local renegades, but by federal agents already watching him for his parole violations, illegal contacts, and new cybercrimes. Because while he was busy playing games, I'd made a few quiet calls to friends in higher places. The kind of friends who owe favors to men who didn't stay dead. The charity event was picture perfect. Big banners, well-dressed donors, parents smiling for cameras, kids playing while photographers snapped their staged little moments. But for me, it wasn't an event. It was a battlefield. Robert stood by the security monitors in a temporary command center we had set up 2 buildings away. Federal agents mingled in the crowd, disguised as volunteers, photographers, even caterers. Every inch of the venue was wired, mapped, covered. And right in the center of it all, my daughter. Lily. Safe. Protected. Oblivious to the silent war happening around her. Then at 2:17 p.m., Robert's voice crackled in my earpiece. Target acquired. Northwest corner. He's here. I didn't turn my head. Didn't react. I just kept playing my part, the relaxed father chatting with another parent, my eyes never leaving Lily. David Mercer had cleaned himself up for the occasion. Tan sport coat. Aviator sunglasses. Casual confidence like he belonged there. But underneath it, the predator was out. He wasn't here for me. He wasn't even here for confrontation. He was here for her. That's how far his delusion had carried him, the fantasy that he could somehow just insert himself back into Lily's life like all the blood and betrayal had never happened. Robert's voice again. He's moving closer. Past the raffle table. 50 feet. The agents kept calm, letting him approach. We wanted him to take the bait fully, on camera, in public, with witnesses. 30 feet. I saw him now, finally. Through the crowd. That smug, calculating face. The same face I once called a friend. Then, as if it was nothing, he waved. At Lily. A little wave. That's all it took. I watched my daughter freeze for half a second, confused. She didn't recognize him fully, but some old, distant memory must have flickered in her young mind. Her hand twitched upward. She was about to wave back, innocent. That's when I moved. I stepped in front of Lily, blocking his sightline completely. My voice was calm, quiet, ice cold. You made your move, David. He froze. His jaw tightened, eyes darting toward the agents now subtly closing the perimeter. Nate, he whispered, forcing a smile. Come on, man. I just wanted to say hello. You're violating your parole? I wasn't even. Save it, I cut him off. You walked into a federal sting. The agents closed in fast. Guns holstered, voices calm but firm. Mr. Mercer, you're under arrest. Hands behind your back. The cuffs went on. The crowd parted. And just like that, it was done. As they led him away, David tried one last look back at me. Some pathetic attempt to hold onto the illusion of control. I gave him nothing. Not a word. Not a glance. The agents loaded him into the unmarked car like they were taking out the trash. No media. No cameras this time. Just cold, silent accountability. Exactly how I wanted it. Back at my house that evening, Robert and I sat in the garage again, like old times. The war room that once helped me dismantle Amanda's lies was now hosting the final autopsy on David Mercer's delusions. They've gotten dead to rights this time, Robert said, scrolling through the preliminary reports. Illegal surveillance. Harassment. Parole violation. Attempted custodial interference. And the big one, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. He wasn't getting out this time. His attorney's already begging for a deal, Robert smirked. But the feds aren't biting. They've got everything. He's cooked. Good, I said. My voice was calm, flat, final. No loopholes. No cooperation agreements. No reduced sentence. Robert nodded. We both knew how rare that was in cases like this. But David had already burned too many bridges, lied too many times, left too many victims behind. He was toxic now, even to the system. You see, David made one crucial mistake that Amanda, for all her cold calculation, never did. He thought this was still a negotiation. He thought there was still some chip left to bargain with. But by the time he showed up at that charity event, he didn't realize the war was already over. What he walked into wasn't a battle. It was a burial. I kept Lily out of the details. She only knew that a bad man, wouldn't be bothering us anymore. She didn't need to know the full weight of the sickness that nearly stole her childhood. That was my burden to carry, not hers. A few weeks later, I got an official letter from the Department of Justice. United States versus David Mercer. Guilty plea entered. Sentenced to 18 years federal time. No parole. No early release. No appeals. By the time he'd walk free again, if he even made it that long, Lily would be grown, married, maybe even with children of her own. And me? Long gone from his world entirely. Robert folded the letter up and handed it back to me. It's done, Nate. I nodded. But we both knew better. The war was over. But wars leave scars that don't fade. They harden you into something colder than the battlefield ever could. I stared at that letter long after Robert left. The final piece of a puzzle I never wanted to build. And for the first time, I allowed myself to whisper something I hadn't spoken out loud since I first returned from that grave. You lost. After David's sentencing, there was no grand celebration. No champagne. No cathartic cheers. Just silence. The kind of silence you don't realize you've been craving until it finally arrives. The kind that lets you hear your own breathing again. Lily adapted quicker than I ever could have hoped. Kids do that. They find a way to survive the storms adults barely manage to walk through. She laughed more. Slept better. Stopped asking about people I once dreaded naming. Her world was safe. That was enough for me. We moved again, one final time. A smaller town, far from the old ghosts. Fresh schools. New neighbors. No more headlines or whispers. Just a man raising his daughter. But I wasn't naive enough to think the story left me untouched. You don't survive 2 deaths, one overseas, one at home, and come back the same man. You carry pieces of the grave with you. Some nights, I still woke up at 2 a.m., breathing like I was back in Kandahar, covered in sand and blood. Other nights, it was Amanda's voice that echoed, or David's face behind those sunglasses at the charity event. The battlefield never truly leaves you. It just changes uniform. One evening, months later, I sat on the porch. The house was finally quiet. Lily was asleep. Robert's words rang back in my mind from that night he handed me the sentencing letter. It's done, Nate. But was it? I stared up at the stars, distant, cold, untouchable. Everything David and Amanda chased, everything they ruined, it all came down to one thing they could never understand. Peace isn't something you take. It's something you earn. That's when the final surprise came. The letter. Another envelope. Handwritten this time. From Amanda. I sat there a long time before opening it. My fingers didn't tremble. The cold had long since burned through the nerves. Inside was a single page. Neat handwriting. Familiar loops and curves from a woman I once thought I knew better than myself. Nathan. You won. I thought I understood how far people could fall. But I never imagined I'd end up where I am, and you still standing. I won't ask for forgiveness. I won't ask for contact. But I wanted you to know that I've finally accepted it. You were always stronger than any of us. You deserved better than me. Take care of Lily. Amanda. No plea for redemption. No apology worth anything real. Just an ending. I burned the letter that same night. Not out of anger. Not even out of spite. It was simply done. Time has a way of sanding down the sharpest edges. Not erasing them, no. The scars remain. But they dull. And in that dullness, you find something resembling peace. A full year passed after Amanda's letter. The world kept turning. Lily grew taller, her laughter fuller. School reports replaced court dates. Soccer games replaced surveillance logs. Parent-teacher meetings replaced whispered depositions in federal offices. Every time I watched her run across that field or beam with pride at a spelling test, I reminded myself why I'd fought the war I never wanted. Not for revenge. Not even for justice. For her. We built a life that had nothing to do with my past anymore. No interviews. No attorneys. No hidden cameras in dark garages. Just quiet mornings. Slow breakfasts. Books read under warm blankets. But even in peace, you carry the soldier inside you. A part of me never fully put the uniform down. I just wear it differently now, as a father, as a protector, as a man who knows exactly how close he came to losing everything. Robert and I still talked. Less frequently. The war had given us a bond that didn't require constant maintenance. You did it, Nate, he said once over coffee. We did it. He smiled. You realize most people would have cracked? You're one stubborn son of a bitch. That's why I came home, I said. I didn't survive over there just to die here. David was gone. Amanda was gone. Their schemes, their lies, their manipulations, all dust now. They built their world on my grave, and I buried them in the ruins of it. There's a kind of satisfaction in knowing they never got what they wanted. David rots in a federal cell. Amanda fades behind bars in state custody. Carolyn has all but vanished from existence, her name a whispered cautionary tale in her empty social circles. Meanwhile, Lily flourishes. And me? I live. Every single day. You want to know the truth? The sweetest revenge isn't watching them suffer. It's making damn sure they know, every time they close their eyes, that I won.